and like the insulation.
So it's
factors
officially
are-
4 o'clock,
Yes.
and
So you might
I
be able
just
to mix and match.
got this working, so that's good. When she gets here, it'll be ready. I'm trying to figure out where to set this up.
She should have arrived before now.
Yeah, definitely.
You're just saying, oh.
Oh, hello.
Escorting
Oh, this was a fire test.
Yeah.
Both tests.
Oh, amazing.
Say hello. This is everyone online.
Hi, everybody.
We stopped in to hang out with us.
You could be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
My son's in college, so hopefully I'll have college.
Right?
Yum. The plurality of 43 million young people who are in debt, in college debt, with no way to pay, are basically indentured servants for life. You can actually change this election. You can take over this election. If young people in debt come out to vote to cancel your debt, we can win this election on that basis alone. And that is our first priority. If we have the honor to turn the White House into a greenhouse, which we're going to try to do, our number one, very first act, official act, will be to cancel student debt,
Yes.
which is long overdue.
Less than 100,000.
So spread that word.
Absolutely.
And it's a whole new ballgame.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
I know a little about the office.
So I think this is the year.
It is,
Yeah.
it really is, yes.
It
And
is.
we'll come back to that, because that is really an important backdrop to this whole thing about how incredibly timely this whole thing is. Not only that a lot of forces are coming together to make it possible, but that other things are happening that make it absolutely essential. If we're going to get out of here alive, we really need to start building the alternative in a way that's prepared to take power soon. This isn't hypothetical, this is what we really need to do. And let's see, did you want to say something real quick before we jump in?
You just arrived? You want to say?
We're just doing our last.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, we'll take care of it. You go talk.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're just doing like a quick minute introduction and to say 2 words about an issue that is leading for you.
Well, my name is Shima, and I'm originally from New York. So now I live in Newburgh, and I was really, really excited to hear about. I never heard about the Green Party candidate, so I'm a little ignorant to that. But thanks to Emma and a lot of my friends that they introduced that party to me, and I mean, I've always been a Democrat for as long as I can remember, like to vote and stuff. So I was a Democrat, but it was like the best of the worst. Like, I don't like a lot of things they do, but it's like, okay, it's better than Republican or whatever.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like the number one issue is just our money that we're spending overseas.
Yeah.
And we're not spending it on good cause, like,
Yeah.
for Africa and for the poor and charity and whatnot, that's fine. But no, we're spending it for genocidal purposes. We're spending it we're wasting it, not spending it. We're wasting it on, funding a fascist state like Israel. We're funding it on wars when we're poor over here. And people don't know that overseas. They think that we're, billionaires here and rich, and that's not true. I'm Middle Eastern, I'm Arab, and I tell them, Americans here struggle. We struggle from so many things, like education. I have to have loans, like tons of loans to pay. And so yeah, that's
Great.
the main issue.
Wonderful.
I have a lot more to say, but
Yeah, all right.
Thank you, Shima. That's awesome.
And we'll expand on all this, and I wanted to get a sense of the room, and I sort of feel like you've made the case right now, and we could just jump right into how we do this, how do we organize. But for the record, I think it's really good to go over sort of what, how are we putting this together as a campaign? How are we seeing this? What is sort of the strategic opportunity of the moment, and why this is such a, it's a life-changing moment. It's a world-changing moment. It's also sort of a Hail Mary moment. It's like, this is the time to throw that pass, folks, because we're not going to have another chance. That in so many ways we are in a moment of historic crisis right now, historic converging crisis of the economy, of our ecology, of peace and global security. and of democracy. And all these crises are converging in a way which is extremely serious and life-threatening. So we need to change history right now, but history is sort of delivering the potential to do that in a way which is so exciting and thrilling. And we need, you know, a transformative solution, not just little tweaks around the sides, you know, around the margins, little things that we think the power structure is willing to give us. No, we need to stand up and take charge here. And there's very good reason for us to do that. When I say us, I mean a broad coalition for people, planet, and peace over profit. You know, that's sort of the vision in a nutshell. It's sort of the spectrum of justice. Because when you put us together, when you put us together, we have the numbers, we have the power, we have the solutions, we've got the blueprints, or the green prints, as my friend Larry Brahm over there, and Jody Grage, who have just come in, wonderful teammates here. Thank you for being here. We're just sort of jumping into our discussion right now. We've got the ideas, we've got the agenda that has enormous public resonance. And in fact, when you add up the numbers, we've got all the numbers that it takes. And in fact, it's just the propaganda of the political predators. And I think, you know, we need to call them that, because this is a predatory political establishment. It's not neutral. You know, it's created this mess and it's being rewarded richly for it. And, you know, from their point of view, things are working great. But when you actually add up the numbers of the people who are being crushed, and, you know, the numbers are something like 84% of the world now is living in extremely deep poverty, and it's getting worse. It's not getting better. It's actually getting worse. And in the US, you know, we have our own version of that, which is very difficult. We have a different kind of poverty. In some ways, it's not so extreme, but in other ways, it's much more toxic. And we don't have kind of a sense of community and cultural support that more traditional cultures have. So, you know, it's its own unique problem here in the US. But when you add up our numbers, we have all the numbers that it takes. And if you look, for example, at young people in debt, young and not so young, because there's a whole lot of people now of growing ages, you know, who are in debt because the debt cannot be repaid in the economy that we have. And when you add up those numbers now, it's like 43 million and counting who are in this predatory debt, which essentially makes you an indentured servant for the long haul. Why is that? Because we have an economy which is largely temp and part-time jobs. We have now a new record, more temporary jobs now than ever before. 9 out of 10 types of jobs being created don't require a high school degree. You know, this is where the economy has been engineered. This is where we're at. So that debt fundamentally cannot be repaid. So when the word gets out to young people in debt that they can cancel their debt simply by coming out and voting green in 2016, if that word gets out, there's no way we're going to be able to stop 43 million people from coming out to cancel their debt. And no one is more positioned to network and self-mobilize than that younger generation in debt on social media and Facebook, etc. And as that begins to happen, you know, we have this rising tide that's going to build on itself. It's like a tsunami. And that could actually happen. You know, people say to me, are you going to win? You know, and I say, well, I'm not holding my breath, but I'm not ruling it out either, because there actually is a realistic pathway towards winning. And it could be as simple as letting young people, empowering young people to empower each other to know to come out and cancel debt. Because that alone, I have yet to find the young person in debt who learns about that, who doesn't then instantly become, you know, a missionary for this campaign. And it's a self-perpetuating solution, because if you unleash young people in debt to actually become productive members of society again, and creative members of society, not just the latest cash cow who's being wrung, you know, for every last cent, which is how the younger generation is being treated. You know, who wouldn't stay home when you've basically been slapped around like that? Young people are basically, you know, exploited on debt, on the skyrocketing cost of education, on the lousy jobs, which they've inherited, the lousy economy, and the climate catastrophe. This all falls on the shoulders of young people. Who wouldn't stay home? I mean, why come out and vote when it's just two versions of that predatory future? So, you know, to change the story there, and it was 80% of young people who sat out the last election in 2014, 80% stayed home, which is not that different from 2/3 of US voters in total who stayed home in the last election. That's why one of our mottos is that the lesser evil paves the way to the greater evil. You will get there, because lesser evilism discourages people from voting. Why come out? People don't get inspired against things. They get inspired for things. So another motto that you may want to pass on to people, you know, is to forget the lesser evil and to stand up and fight for the greater good. Our lives depend on it, now more than ever. And that's basically what our agenda is about. It's an agenda of greater good that actually is workable. And people are blown away to hear this well-kept secret that we can actually solve these problems. And I'll come back to that in a moment. But, you know, I just wanted to stress that the politics of fear that tells you have to silence yourself and just buy into the least worst, you know, it not only makes people stay home, makes them, you know, tune out and tune into something else. You know, it's basically a dead end, but it's false. You know, the politics of fear has delivered everything we were afraid of. All those reasons you were told you had to vote for the lesser evil because you didn't want the massive Wall Street bailouts, you didn't want the offshoring of our jobs, you didn't want another Trans-Pacific Partnership type corporate trade agreement, you didn't want the meltdown of the climate, you didn't want the attack on immigrants, on our civil liberties, on press freedoms, on the massive expansion of drone warfare and the so-called war on terror, which is terror and which creates terror itself. Those were all the reasons people were told they had to do this so-called safe vote. But that safe vote is the most dangerous thing imaginable. That safe vote basically guarantees that we continue down this lethal trajectory. And, you know, of greater student debt, of the privatization of our schools, of high stakes testing, of the school to prison pipeline, of, you know, massive foreclosures and homelessness. That's what we bought into. And issue by issue, you can look at the record of the Obama administration, even when they had 2 Democratic houses of Congress. That's what they accomplished. And I can give you the numbers on that if you want them. But they basically blew up all the bad things Bush had done. They made him look like a wimp. They massively expanded on that. And they did, you know, on small tweaks around the margins, you could find areas where their policies are less predatory. But in terms of the fundamental economics, our civil liberties, our foreign policy, our economy, and the climate, you know, this is devastation. And another, you know, people often are at a loss for how do you speak to folks who are just kind of like operating on zombie politics. You know, how do you speak to them? Well, another little phrase, which one I was about to give you. Well, you know, one is that the politics of fear has delivered everything we were afraid of. And it has, you know, it's the politics of courage that we need. And another example you can cite there is what happened under Richard Nixon, one of the most, you know, regressive, oppressive, and corrupt presidents ever. We brought the troops home from Vietnam. We really pushed the Supreme Court to provide women the right to choose. We established the EPA, OSHA, and workers' health and safety, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act. There was nothing we couldn't do because we understood that we are our democracy and we have to drive the agenda and who's in office and what they do. So trading your power, our power of democracy, for, you know, this concept that we're going to silence ourselves and expect a corporate political party and a corporate politician to, you know, to give us little small things here and there, you know, that's just nuts. We cannot trade our fundamental democracy and our mobilization and our intentions to stand up and fight for what we need. That's what's going to win the day. And we need that politics of courage in the voting booth in the same way that we need it out in the street. And, you know, that's what we can do in this incredible, historic, transformative moment that we're in. Let me just say a few words about how we solve this. And that first little, you know, I sort of consider myself a political therapist. You know, I've moved from practicing clinical medicine to practicing political medicine because it's the mother of all evils, or we should say the mother of all illnesses, politics that is. And we've got to like cure our political illness in order to cure all the other things that are literally killing us. And in addition, you know, I sort of think of my role as helping people. I mean, we all have to play this role, I think, of political therapists, and helping our friends and colleagues find their political power. It's like helping a friend break up with an abusive relationship. It's like breaking up with the Democratic Party. You know, it's like you just have to get back in touch that you deserve better. You shouldn't be making excuses for your abuser.
Exactly.
And you'll find people do that over and over. So it's about empowering each other to tap into our power and our right to have a world that actually works for us. An America that works for all of us and a world that works for all of us. And I better grab a cup of water from someone before I talk myself hoarse here at the very beginning. Thank you.
Over there.
So I'm just going to name, so that's just sort of like a dose of political therapy for us all to chew on, to recognize that we have the numbers. And let me just quote some numbers for you. 50% of people in the latest Wall Street Journal poll, which was done at the end of the summer, thank you.
That's good Portland water.
All right, no, can't beat it, thank you.
Should have brought my stuff.
Keep it that way. 50%, thank you, of American voters now have basically divorced the Democratic and Republican parties. And in fact, disapproval rates are majority. Majorities disapprove, that is, have unfavorable views of both Democrats and Republicans. So it's 50% now who do not regard themselves as Democrat or Republican. And it's 21% who identify as Republicans, and it is 29% that regard themselves as Democrats. So remember, you're in a really good position to start with. Don't let them talk you into a defensive mindset where you think that, you know, oh, we're just some marginal fringe group. And I have to tell you one other just quick anecdote to drive this home. The first time I was tricked into running for office, which was in 2000, preparing for the 2002 election, running as governor in Massachusetts, I was tricked into running, thinking that it would just be, you know, just do what you're doing, you know, as an environmental health advocate. It became more complicated than that, but it got more fun as it went along once you get tricked into doing it, which is something no one in their right mind would want to do. But once you are forced or tricked, it definitely has a lot of redeeming value, and it can be very, very fun if you're doing it with integrity and you're really doing it to build the movement. It's a no-lose proposition. It really is. And so anyhow, we fought our way into a debate, and this was a televised gubernatorial debate with Mitt Romney and a few other notables, the treasurer of the state as well, who was running as a Democrat, and a libertarian, and one other person. So we had a televised debate because the mobs were just coming out and saying, no, this is absurd. We need an open debate. So we called out such a loud and boisterous crowd that they finally agreed to let us into a debate. And in that debate, I articulated the basic green agenda for people, planet, and peace over profit. And it was treated like it was the lunatic fringe in that discussion. And inside the debate hall, those ideas went over like a lead balloon. This was like in the TV studio, okay? So it's just candidates and moderator. And when we walked out from the debate, I was mobbed by the press, who told me that I had won the debate on the instant online viewer poll. And it was like suddenly, you know, the light went off in my head, and I realized the way that we think, and part of what we were doing, we were arguing against high stakes testing, and saying that, no, we need to teach to the whole student for lifetime learning. We need, we need schools that are about education, that are about music and recreation and arts and community engagement and stuff like that, and healthcare is a human right, and, the usual agenda. And, lo and behold, it wasn't the lunatic fringe. It was like what most people wanted even back in 2002 when things weren't nearly as difficult and really desperate as they are today. So, that was just, that was the beginning of my awakening that, no, this is not futile, that they are just working overtime to try to convince us that we are powerless, because they are quaking in their boots at how powerful we are the minute we get together and we push forward. The minute we recognize our power. Alice Walker has this great quote about how the biggest way people give up power is by not knowing we had it to start with. But once you recognize that we have it and you flick that switch from powerless to powerful and we start acting on it, this is a transformative moment. And the critical issue is to go outside of the circles so many of us activists, are coming from relatively privileged and educated backgrounds. So we think everybody thinks like our demographic, but in fact, most people who are struggling, the average worker's wages right now is barely above poverty. 40% of workers are making $20,000 a year or less. 40 household wealth has collapsed by 40%. Cost of healthcare has doubled for workers over the last 5 years with this great Affordable Care Act, which is not affordable and not particularly caring either. So there's a lot of momentum and support out there, and it's all about being strategic about who do we talk to and the networks that we go out and support and work to mobilize. So, it's a whole new world out there, and I'm just going to run through a couple things that we talk about. One is a Green New Deal, which is a win-win solution. It is an emergency program modeled on the New Deal that got us out of the Great Depression. So it's not like rocket science. This is pretty straightforward. It's an emergency program to create 20 million jobs that put people back to work in greening the economy, our energy, our food, and our transportation system, building the essential infrastructure and rebuilding the infrastructure, like the pipes that are deteriorating in Flint. All over the country, those pipes are deteriorating. So it's recreating that infrastructure and also restoring ecosystems, which are also really, really critical. And we also call for meeting human needs. So it's a broad agenda, but with $20 million, you can do a lot of stuff. And it, in one fell swoop, so it targets 100% clean renewable energy by 2030, which is in time to actually fix the problem. So it revives the economy while it turns the tide on climate change, and it makes wars for oil obsolete. That's the other critical thing here. That it's not the economy against the environment and war is like its own, immutable force. No, we fix all these things together. In fact, you can't fix them one at a time, which is part of where we depart from Bernie. That Bernie thinks we can sort of stay the course on the war machine because it brings lots of jobs. Well, those are the wrong jobs. And in fact, we got those jobs, we converted the economy in 6 months in World War II. When Pearl Harbor was bombed, it took us 6 months to massively convert the economy. And that was after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. Well, the bombing of Pearl Harbor, as terrible as it was, is nothing. It doesn't hold a candle to the massive destruction of climate change. And that's here right now, and it's also not that far away when we look at 10 or 20 feet of sea level rise, which is now predicted for within a couple of decades, unless we dramatically change course, we're going to see massive sea level rise and basically the obliteration of all harbors all around the world. This isn't just Pearl Harbor, this is all harbors and the billions of people who basically live in proximity to coastlines. This is the absolute destruction of all life-supporting infrastructure and our major population centers around the world. Add to that, we have, the extinctions. We're in the midst of this sixth great extinction. And if you want to survive a great extinction, you need to be smaller than a squirrel because mammals otherwise don't make it. So, there are reasons why we really need to fix this now and why we can transform our economy and moving from the war and and fossil fuel economy to the green, sustainable economy is critical, and it can be done. It can actually be done within 15 years. If we could do 25% of the GDP in 6 months, you know, you can be sure that we can transform the entire economy in 15 years. What we need really is, you know, we need leadership. We need a political narrative that actually empowers us to do the right thing. Because right now they're playing off jobs against climate and the environment as if you have to choose one or the other. And in fact, they can only survive if we're doing all of them together. And the benefit is that we don't need the friggin' wars for oil then, which have, you know, what have they accomplished? Well, $6 trillion is what we've spent over the last, you know, 14 years on these 3 major wars. $6 trillion turns out to be $75,000 per household that we will have put into these wars by the time their bills are paid. $75,000 a household. Is that a tax that anybody feels good about? I doubt it. Killed 1 million people in Iraq alone, let alone killed and maimed tens of thousands of US soldiers. And what has it gotten us? Failed states, massively increased terrorist threats, and unbelievable mass refugee migrations, which are really threatening the core of Europe and many other societies around the world. This is absolutely unsustainable. That's why, in many ways, you know, it's not just throwing away your vote to vote more of the same. You know, we cannot go down this road. You know, so it's not just a thrown away vote. It's a vote of self-destruction. You know, don't use your vote as a weapon against yourself. You know, use your vote to push us forward in the way that independent politics has always pushed us forward. Independent third parties have always been a critical part of pushing the system forward. And when third parties were silenced, starting actually around the time of the New Deal, when there was a New Deal coalition and third parties sort of joined that coalition in the Democratic Party, and we lost the push of third parties, that's when forward progress stopped and we began to basically backslide. So in my view, standing up and voting a vote of courage and a vote which has a real agenda really pushes us forward. It moves us forward in a very concrete way. And it moves us forward in a way that if we don't have it, we can be sure that we're going to continue backsliding. And we are, you know, it's not like back against the wall. It's like back over the cliff right now. You know, we're in a free fall. And we got to move fast to get out of that free fall. And we have all the makings of doing that. And the Green New Deal is one part of how we don't like just survive. We can actually thrive. And it changes, you know, sort of the context and the basic values so that they're founded on democracy, justice, and human rights. Those become sort of the core of what we're doing under the Green New Deal. I want to mention student debt. We can cancel student debt. It's really critical, not only to solve that problem of debt, but to bring back a generation that's been sort of put out to pasture, you know, prematurely. This is about re-engaging young people, because without that vision and the energy of the younger generation, we don't move forward. That's who it is that transforms society. And we need that energy. All of us badly need it, or we're going to be stuck. That's why canceling student debt is the first priority of our administration. If we have the honor of serving, our first priority is to cancel that debt so that we can liberate that generation to get back involved and become part of society. Once you've canceled debt, you know, then young people can be involved. But right now they're too busy working 3 jobs, you know, 3 part-time minimum wage jobs, and just trying to keep a roof over their head, let alone even pay back their debt. So that's a critical solution. I want to mention also, you know, free public higher education, which goes along with canceling the debt. These things pay for themselves, by the way. We know that public higher ed returns $7 for every dollar that we put in as taxpayers, and it's the right thing to do. We provided high school education throughout the 20th century because it was essential for economic security. And in the 21st century, you need that college degree. So by right, it should be provided. We call for healthcare as a human right under Medicare for All, which also pays for itself. These are like basically zero cost investments. It's about taking the money away from the predators and ensuring that we have a streamlined, simplified system, insurance system that takes the bureaucracy out and puts the healthcare back in. On public education, I just want to mention that we need to revive public education. We've sort of replaced it with this privatization model, which is essentially test, punish, and privatize, and to bash teachers while you're at it and blame them for all the problems of poverty. You know, so this is nonsense and it needs to be stopped. And it's been really carried forward again by the Democrats who've been leading the charge on the privatization of our schools and also the use of high stakes testing. So we're calling for fully funding our schools, for basically reinvigorating public education, for doing away with high stakes testing. Fine to use some tests for diagnostic purposes, but not for, the high stakes, make it or break it. There's no place for that. It's completely disproven by existing data, let alone what we had before. We never should have gone there. Now there's even more reason to come back from that. And we need to ensure that young people come to school ready to learn, that they are housed, that they are clothed, that they are healthy, and they are well nourished. So that would go a long way to enabling kids to learn, because when they're coming to school, breathing pollution, walking through gunfire, coming out of homeless shelters, living in incredible, unstable situations. And 50% of kids in public schools now are in poverty. It's absolutely shocking. When 50% of kids are in poverty, there's just no way they are coming to school ready to be educated. That covers the highlights. I'll also just mention a national action plan for racial justice. We can solve this issue of police violence, and we can solve it now. This is not rocket science. We can ensure that there are citizen review boards and that there are investigators, that there are attorneys who are ready and empowered. You don't need, an act of the White House in order to have an investigation. You should be able to just have investigators at the ready so that people are held accountable when they commit, murder and violence, and all deaths should be investigated, all deaths that take place in police custody. So there are ways to deal with this, and we need to deal with the inherent racism in the economy as well, and in housing and healthcare, and in hiring. The unemployment rates are twice as high in communities of color. So these are fixable problems, and there is a way forward here, which is really exciting, which can get the job done. We have the numbers, we have the solutions. By ending these wars for oil, we also bring back an enormous amount of resources into our economy so that we can do what we need. And I should mention one last factoid, and that's the Green New Deal. Because we get so much healthier when we're not breathing that pollution, and not, it's not in our water supply, and the mercury isn't working its way up the fish food chain and all that. We get so much healthier, less cancer, less heart disease, less asthma, less emphysema. It actually pays the cost of the transition in relatively short order. So the Green New Deal actually pays for itself even before you factor in ending the wars for oil. So this is an economic, bonanza in the making. So this is all good stuff. The missing link in all this is about our standing up and pushing forward. And I'll just say a word about the campaign, because it is unbelievably exciting to see all this happening now, to compare it with where we were 4 years ago, and to see how far we've come. Partly that we've been proven right, on our agenda. Really on all the issues, we've been ahead of the curve, and the curve's caught up to us. So we have a whole lot of credibility going into this. We have a lot of attention from the press. We were on CNN. I was on CNN Morning News on Saturday, just this past week, which was a big breakthrough. We've been getting a lot of attention from the progressive press. There is kind of this big focus on Bernie right now, and that's going to run its course. He'll probably win New Hampshire, but you know, America is not New Hampshire. And, you know, Hillary has her lead. And at some point, the Democratic Party is going to take out its big guns. For Howard Dean, you remember that was the Dean scream. For Jesse Jackson, it was that he was anti-Semitic, you know, anti-Israel. So there's a big smear campaign against him about that. You know, so they will find some very clever and devious way to bring him down. They're already busy scooping up the super delegates. Super Tuesday will be very stressful if you're not a big corporate campaign and you don't have your super PACs to get you through that. So I think that's going to run its course. The Democratic Party has long since been sold out, you know, and it's run by predatory banks, fossil fuel giants, and war profiteers. They're not about to give it up right now. They're pretty entrenched. So they're going to do their thing. And our job, I think, is to just lift up our, you know, our real way forward as loud and strong as we can and lay the groundwork for that big shift. When Bernie's campaign folds into Hillary's, there's going to be a lot of people looking for a place to go with integrity. And I think the number one priority is getting the word out to young people and on campuses, because that alone is enough to win the election right there. If we did nothing but organize among people in debt, not just that you get to renegotiate your debt, but that we can wipe that debt out starting in November of 2016. We can actually do that. So I want to just give you a big thank you for seeing the way forward. And if you have those little forms, I'll mention it now because otherwise we'll get lost in the shuffle, that we have qualified for matching funds, which is historic. Thank you for your help, for getting us there. So everything you contribute now, up to 250. If you are in a position to contribute more than 250, you can do that. You never know who in the room might have deep pockets. You never know. The legal limit is actually $5,500. I just say that for the record. But, you know, a contribution of any amount is wonderful and is life-saving. And we have literally thousands of volunteers who've signed up on our website now. And we are just now starting to flesh out the campaign so we can do the hiring and we can start doing this outreach to so many communities who have been locked out, whether it's young people or, you know, workers. The unions, you know, may be slow to move. They're not going to be the first ones to come around, but there are a lot of rank and file people out there that deserve a whole lot more. The homeless,
I'm just looking at this.
immigrants. There are 25 million Latinos who've learned, and these are Latinos who vote, in addition to 12 million undocumented Americans who are Latino. They have learned that Democrats are the party of deportation, while the Republicans are the party of hate and fear-mongering and smearing. So they're looking for a place to go. So, you know, and we have, you know, basically people who are ready to just beat a path to our door and do organizing, but we need, you know, we need a staff to help support a real ground game. So your dollars will be put to very good work. They will be doubled. You can contribute online. You can also contribute by check. We, you know, we're a fully compliant, FEC compliant campaign for the matching funds. So we have a little form there that asks who your employer is and what your occupation is. That's all just for FEC reporting, so they can track when the big, you know, gorillas are taking over the funding. We can see it. That's not a problem we have to worry about. If you are a lobbyist for or a CEO of a for-profit corporation, and there are some good corporations out there, like, you know, green energy corporations, etc. But to be above board, we don't take money from anyone who hires a lobbyist. Any for-profit corporation that hires a lobbyist, we just don't take the money so that there are no strings attached.
Yeah.
Whether they're good strings or bad strings, we just don't believe in political strings.
Yeah.
So that's how it works for us. So I want to just give you a big thank you for being here and being you know, being the leading edge, for leading the charge to a world that works for all of us, that puts people, planet, and peace over profit, because our lives depend on it and our time has come.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I think I do. So,
We have some questions from people who are watching online, if we can just establish those. So the first one comes from Millie Diaz in Hollywood, Florida.
okay, great.
During your 2012 presidential run, you pulled in a total of 469,501 votes, which was amazing, but not enough to win. I certainly feel you are the best candidate and would really like to see you take office. What are you doing differently this time around to affect the people's vote to win?
Awesome. Great question. So let me say that this time around, for one thing, we have much better coverage. So we're getting more coverage in the progressive press, and even the not so progressive press. We did CNN the other day. And we're also better organized, so that we're using social media. And if you go to Dr. Jill Stein, and that's Dr. No period, Dr. Jill Stein on Facebook. Get on Facebook, because you know that's where it's really happening and where the word spreads. So we have a very big Facebook following now, and that's where a lot of the action is. So it's social media, and it's grassroots organizing, and it's a guerrilla campaign. We have held off the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is a whole other story that I won't say a lot about, except that this is a really terrible trade deal, which basically betrays the whole concept of democracy, because it allows a court to overrule our laws and our regulations. So it basically destroys our ability to make laws. You know, what is a democracy supposed to do? And that Trans-Pacific Partnership is being moved ahead. So anyhow, we have, as a grassroots movement, we have stopped the TPP. It was supposed to have been passed at least a year ago. We have stopped it, and stay tuned, by the way, because we'll be helping to organize actions around the country in February. President Obama is about to sign the TPP, but that does not make it law. So it makes it really critical when he signs it on February 4th that we are going to start undertaking grassroots actions. And I want to give a big shout out for Portland and all the amazing direct actions that you have taken to stop all these terrible fossil fuel facilities. Yes, it's worth barking about. So stay tuned. We'll be getting word out. We also have some legal cases. We are suing the debate commission to try to open up the debates, because when we're here, when we're heard, we win. So we're going to be fighting to get into the debates and really empower voters. Because remember, the majority of voters now is not a Democrat or a Republican. It's an independent. So independents deserve to hear other candidates besides the minority Democratic and Republican candidates.
That's non-affiliated voters.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Non-affiliated. Many words for it, but say non-Democrat and non-Republican.
Right.
And some of them are affiliated with things like the Green Party or the Socialist parties and things like that. But it's 50%. That's like half of voters are non-Democrat, non-Republican. So we're fighting to get into the debates, and we will be helping to organize direct actions to make it clear that our democracy is not optional. You know, it's really essential. So get ready, go to our website and sign up and stay tuned. So we'll be getting the word out, and soon we will have organizers to help you get the word out. We really want to help campuses set up chapters and give you the tools you can use, flyers and websites and so on, so that you can be leading the charge, really, to rescue the future, not only for the younger generation, but for all of us who are really depending on you.
Okay.
Another question here is, does Canada's election of Justin Trudeau as a new Prime Minister inspire your Power to the People plan? And if so, how?
Let's see. Well, let me say it's complicated. It's a mixed bag, and there's some things Justin Trudeau is doing and some things he's not doing. We definitely, you know, there were some good candidates who got locked out in the Canadian election because people were trying to consolidate around, I think, a candidate that they thought could win. And what we're trying to do is really encourage people to stand up and not be intimidated by this lesser evil idea, because the lesser evil, as we've seen, paves the way to the greater evil, that we have to stand up for what we deserve. And we need to forget the lesser evil and fight for the greater good, because we've had this lesser evil thing going on for too long. And with that in mind, there is an agenda for jobs, for ending student debt, for fixing the climate crisis, for healthcare as a human right, for free public higher education. We deserve nothing less, and we can actually afford this now. So you're right, it is a power to the people plan, and we're a power to the people campaign, and that's truly where the power is. So join us and make it so.
Any other questions from the room?
What, when you mentioned that we're going to try and be in the presidential debates, we know what happened there. They formed a corporation, and now it's in the hands of a corporation. We already knew they were in the hands of a corporation, but now they really are in the hands of a corporation for these presidential debates. So other than to start a lawsuit, is there a way in?
The corporation, well, they're called the Commission on Presidential Debates.
Right.
And they're a corporation that's run by the Democratic and Republican parties. So it's like an outrageous concept that these two parties that represent 21 and 29% of the vote, they get to wipe out all other options. What we're calling for is for candidates who have the support base to be on the ballot for the majority of voters. We were on the ballot for almost 85% of voters in the last election. That if you're on the ballot in enough states that you can actually win the election, voters deserve to know about you. Voters have not only a right to vote, but they also have a right to know who they can vote for and to know about those candidates. Now, some people say, oh, if you open the floodgates, you know, you're going to have so many hundreds of candidates, you can't conduct a debate. But if you use that criteria, that you will be admitted to the debate if you're on the ballot for enough voters that you could actually win the election, we would have 4 candidates in the debate. And over the last many years, we basically would have had 4 to 5 at most candidates. So that would create a real, you know, a dynamic election, which would have a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, and a Green, basically. So you'd really have a spectrum instead of this very centrist, corporatist point of view that differs on social issues, but is, you know, really on the same plate when it comes to war, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to, you know, wiping out workers' rights and privatizing our education and our healthcare system and so on. So it's a problem that can be fixed. How did we fight our way into the debates, you know, in 2002? Actually, we had huge demonstrations. We had huge demonstrations that just kind of went viral. And there were so many people who turned out that they just couldn't stop it. And when you think about social change, huge demonstrations is often the way that it happens, especially if there are moms and babies involved, because that tends to stay the hand of the fascist state. So East Berlin, when they were confronted with these massive demonstrations, they called out the troops, but the troops wouldn't fire because it was moms and babies there too. So, you know, if you look at what just happened in Guatemala, where they basically, you know, imprisoned their president, who had been a part of the, you know, the death squads, you know, that happened based on huge demonstrations as well. So there are several models of peaceful transition, you know, and I think above all, we need a huge demonstration on voting day inside the voting booth, and we all need to exercise massive, you know, direct action in the voting booth by going out and defying the political predators and voting on our behalf for a future that works for all of us.
Daniel?
Yeah, I have two questions. But
Sure.
I guess my first one is like, what happened to the 2002 race? Did you win? Or
Oh, in that race?
yeah.
Well, what happened was once we won the debate, they took us out of the debate because it became clear that we were very, that my campaign was a real present danger to them. So they took us out of the debate and, sort of totally silenced all knowledge of the campaign. We wound up winning, hundreds of thousands of votes, but they slammed us. And we went to court. The court was, brain dead. They didn't get it. But we established a base from which we continue to build. And, we had a city councilor for many years in Boston, the Boston City Council, who was green. And, it's a struggle, but it's a struggle in which we become much more powerful. In 2002, we were really ahead of the curve on green energy, on conflict resolution, on high stakes testing, on gay marriage. There were just so many things where the Greens have been ahead, and we keep being, validated on issue after issue. So as people become more and more, alerted and mobilized that this predatory corporate political system and economy it's a death sentence. We've basically built it, and they're coming.
And,
Mitt Romney won.
oh right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And my second question was, what is the campaign strategy to reach out to Latino and voters of color and
Yes.
communities
Yes.
who speak a language other than English?
Great. We are very well networked with these communities, and now what we need to start doing is hiring on staff to help support their outreach. And I don't know if you know the Black Agenda Report. It's a really dynamite. Is that ring bells for people?
Yeah, it rings my bell.
What's that?
It rings my bell.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very awesome, African American perspective on politics. And one of the lead editors for the Black Agenda Report is one of our deputy campaign managers, who is just, in fact, we are hoping to tackle North Carolina and Georgia. Georgia in particular has the largest African American population in the US. And it also has the most regressive and restrictive ballot access rules. So it's very hard for an independent third party to offer an option there, but we are undertaking Georgia and North Carolina as we speak. So we have these huge ballot drives ahead of us. And in the process of doing those ballot drives, we're actually working with frontline communities to be a part of that and to help lead the charge. And we need to be able to support them in doing that. So that's a lot of what our current, fundraising is for, so that we can actually do these hires to support the work in those communities. Likewise, we're very networked with the Latino community and have in our campaign leadership from that community. And there are others who really want to expand. Some of the biggest online organizing that's gone on in the Latino community would like to be involved with our campaign.
Yeah.
And it takes resources to do that.
And a lot of the Asian Pacific Islander community, like
Yes.
connected to them too.
Increasingly, yes,
Yes.
and this is another hire that we're about to make. So yeah, we're absolutely looking to do that as well, and to really, continue building as a really diverse campaign that lifts up these frontline struggles into the front lines of presidential dialogue and debate. Because we shouldn't just be talking about Hillary's, emails. We really need to be talking about Black Lives Matter and Asian Lives Matter and ending the deportations and providing refugee status and creating a path to citizenship for the undocumented, who are really the backbone of our community. So, we've taken positions that the communities are very excited about. I spoke at the biggest rally, actually, that the School of the Americas Watch. Are you familiar? School of the Americas Watch is, yes, in Georgia. I spoke at one of their rallies, which was really interesting. I mean, School of the Americas, at a time that immigrants are being bashed, they held the largest rally that they've ever held on behalf of immigrant rights. You know, it just shows you how false and manipulative our political dialogue is. You know, it's really been making immigrant bashing look like it's the norm, but it's really not. It's important to remember when Donald Trump is winning, you know, like a third of the Republican vote, remember that's a third of 21%, which is 7%. And the media lifts it up like it's the dominant American paradigm. It is not the dominant American paradigm. It's not by any means. And by fanning the flames, you know, you just encourage the pathology. And there's a lot of pathology out there. There is. But there's also a lot of just, you know, where does fascism come from? Often fascism is a reaction of poor and desperate people whose hopes and dreams have been thwarted, you know, and that's where kind of America is right now. So we definitely have the potential to go fascist big time. But we also have the potential not to go fascist by really adopting a progressive and humanistic agenda. And we have to stand up for that unapologetically, loud and clear, and we will move in that direction. But when you have the media that just wants to, you know, create this ridiculous, you know, disgusting public dialogue, which is not dialogue, it's just fear campaigning, smear campaigning, you know, that's really horrible. And our media needs to be liberated. You know, as much as anything else, we need to take back the public airwaves and break up these big corporate monopolies that have destroyed our media. And that can be done. That can be done. I mean, all of this can be solved. There are solutions for all of this. And that's why, you know, to my mind, the name of the game is about our getting together and being that coalition for people, planet, and peace. Because the minute we do that, we have the numbers and we have the vision and we are unstoppable.
There's one more question online. Every day, people are dying of cancer and other diseases that cannabis has been shown to cure. How will you take on big pharma and a multi-billion cancer treatment industry that doesn't want to let go of the gravy train? How will healthcare change?
Yes. So, you know, I mean, that same question can be asked about everything, you know, from healthcare to jobs to trade. You know, there are predatory industries that have locked us in where we are, and that's why it's so important that we have a coalition for the rest of us, you know, so that we have policy that's actually driven by the public interest. But in terms of specifically, thank you guys. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Take care. And we'll be wrapping up soon. There are great ways to fix this. So for one, we need to actually use science when we're making scientific decisions. So the minute we use science,
Wait a minute.
the minute you use science when you're talking about you know, listed drugs, you know, regulated substances, then marijuana and hemp come off that list of regulated substances. So then we can begin to actually investigate the, you know, the true medical potential of these very important, you know, therapeutic substances. And that means not only for their medical uses, but for hemp, there are all kinds of economic uses as well. So this is a whole area of health as well as a whole area of economic development, and it's grassroots economic development as opposed to like the corporate, because there's a whole corporate thing here which is trying to, you know, monopolize the new hemp and marijuana economies and only make it so that corporations can grow marijuana. You know, so that's not a solution either. We need a solution for everyday people and for the grassroots economy, and that's entirely doable. And that is, you know, part of this agenda that we're moving forward. And if we can mobilize the cannabis community to get out and vote as well,
There's another one.
you know, that's another very big player here that can assure that we can actually win the day on this. All right, great. So let me just give you all a big thank you. I don't know if we had a sign up list here. Did you guys do a sign up list
Yeah, I
or
was
something?
wondering about that too.
Yeah, if you
We'll get
haven't,
one going. We'll get
yeah,
You can
We'll do
just
it.
add us from our form.
yes, if you submitted a form, we've got your info. If you didn't
If you
submit
did
a form,
Facebook,
just,
we've got it too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
okay, great, because it's all about
Thank you
being
so much,
organized.
and thanks for
Thank you
hosting.
so
Oh,
much.
please leave with some goodie bags. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
I
Thanks
get
for
my
coming.
mask. Bye, Jordan.
Thanks.
Oh,
Great. And we just have to do a time
Is that-
check.
It is 5:46.
Okay, all right, great.
A little bit.
Does anybody have another form filled out? Or does anybody need a form?
This is Suki.
There's a lot of coffee.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's amazing. There's a lot of Americans who made, you know, like
That's how you
a
get
lot
the
of us here.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the meaning of that little cryptic comment. I don't have any money left to
Oh,
give
yeah.
this time. I'm spending all my money. That's something that there's. Here it is. Sticking underneath them. You wanna go this way? Is that what you're asking? Okay, go ahead.
Awesome.
It
Yay,
was awesome.
great. Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Good talking with you.
It was
Okay,
great
so
talking
you
to you. Yeah, you're like the only candidate that I follow.
No kidding, wow.
That I follow consistently. And it's just hard because I get a lot of pressure.
Thank you.
Pressure to do my own careers.
No, I'm not doing it. I'm done. I'm finished. I'm fine.
Because there's a,
Wow.
group.
Yeah.
No, it's just for me, I think it's hard.
Yes,
because
yes, I know that one. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I want to know. I
Yes, I
myself,
do.
like, personally, how to be more strategic about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think certainly. I don't know, certainly if Hillary gets nominated.
You can cut on her. She loves that.
I
This
don't know,
was
it'll
a
be
mix
little hard.
of border collie
I
and
know we
German
risk
shepherd.
it. I know I'm gonna face more.
I always thought she had collar in her,
Yes.
but it didn't come up on a
It's so
swab.
unlike.
But the German Shepherd dog
I mean,
came out.
the dog-
Yeah, it's got a little bit of that. Chow.
You might just see her throwing up a hammer and sickle on her teeth.
Thanks a lot for hosting.
Hey, it's really a pleasure.
Oh.
They're gonna use that.
And they'll put it in a fancy glossy
I
ad.
said, look here, we're in the real world. Israel's not going
Yeah.
to.
Is TBS in?
We're simply asking
Has
justice for
just
Palestinians. And that's not a negative,
Oh,
I'd like to point out.
We've
It's
done
positive.
some ads,
And
but
the
you
issue
know,
of
not
justice for
on
Palestinians is something that's kind of
So that
non-negotiable
won't
for the
happen.
entire
But
Green Party.
we don't
But
need that.
nobody. in the
No,
Green
I don't
Party,
think, it's a very, it's like
Nobody else is
artificial.
calling
Yeah.
to dissolve the
It's
union.
like.
It's
No, we don't
like-
want to
it's,
talk
you know,
generations that
asphalt.
It's
Our
it's a-
demographic,
it's
you know, is not
completely
sitting for
unrealistic
today.
kind
You know,
of
our
approach.
demographic is always.
Take a state and say,
So,
let's
Or-
go back.
Yes.
to state.
Yeah.
State.
I was thinking
It's not-
thinking of, you know, you have to recognize, you can do it on Skype.
Or whatever. We recognize it.
You get a group of people and invite them on Facebook and do a Q&A.
Yeah.
That could be very
So that's what the,
successful. I mean, that
build
does
up
not
was.
promise a lot.
My
I
friend,
literally
that
did
I
not
used
broadcast
the wrong,
Yeah.
it was
very
very
easy
easy
to set up.
No, that's really
How many
great.
people? I'm not sure yet. I'll have to check and see how many bulletin board actually plugged in. Yeah, and this is on this WordPress.
Yes, no, not WordPress, it was on the CC.
Or was it?
It's not, no, no.
About whether or not we should abolish Israel.
Low-key.
I just wanted the
We are
CC to be
only
aware
getting to launch
that I was
as a
telling this guy.
organization.
It was to the other guy,
So
primarily.
we're now just
okay.
in the process of-
Usually what happens is 6 months. You go a separate email list for all Middle East
Oh,
discussions.
Way too recherché.
I just
The rest
really
of us
need
are going into
So we're
that.
trying to speed the business, and this debate comes out of
Your
nowhere.
friends may be like,
It was
oh,
not
you
related.
are totally leaving alone, right? And you will challenge them. And if you are informed, because, you know, it's so terrible. that
Seth
young
is as long
generation-
a Green Party worker as I.
Initiated.
He has his own chapter.
and they're gonna be,
No, exactly.
they're gonna
I'm
be
already
dropping
telling.
out because they're so pissed off.
I'm already just telling them like
You
I'm
have it,
still
right?
fake.
Take like 5.
Right? It's insulting for you to tell me to feel the burn because I'm feeling burned already.
Yes,
Like I'm
exactly.
feeling terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Military industrial complex.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Perfect. So I could
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fine, thank
I
you.
mean, we did bailouts. Bailouts. I can.
Like a $500 billion bailout. You know, that was trillions at the time. It's now up to 60 trillion, according to the GAO. Accounting office.
Maybe there's
Places they're still bailing them out. Wow.
They still are.
Well, but I have creditors calling me daily because I got all these the time.
Yes, I am. I can't believe I went.
All my assets are
I just started learning.
All have to have.
This might be a little better.
At least be more sensitive. You're the boring.
And then
Lightsabers behind you.
A little silly standing here smiling all the time.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Okay, hopefully it won't.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely, yeah.
What we were doing was like, if you needed your number.
Yeah.
You couldn't buy the Bitcoin, you would buy it with us, we'd buy it with our credit card. send it to you.
By the way, when I got here,
Right.
You know, the market is can't be right out here, it's just a person who basically closed the assets. It's really $10,000. So they're not the
Yeah.
Can I do anonymous cash?
Yes, you can. Let's see, if you fill out a form,
I filled out a form with cash. Is that okay?
yes, right. If you fill,
Give me a form.
what's that?
Next stop from here.
Okay.
I'm probably on your list.
Well, I know.
All right. Yeah, all right. I think we can.
I am the CEO on a large corporation, but it's just me. It's one person.
Yeah.
So,
No. But you don't have no worries. You don't have a bias, you don't have an empty what's your line?
Going somewhere else.
When's your event? When's your event? So you have another one.
Yeah.
When you donate, you have to sign your name.
Yeah, we're doing
Yeah,
the,
people who are interested in staying up to date.
Oh, that makes sense.
Oh,
yeah.
I came late, so I didn't want to ask too many questions because I didn't know what you wanted to cover.
yeah. Sure, yeah, we'll come to that one.
Yeah, I might.
It should be interesting.
Yeah, cool. You know, never that county on
Oh, good. What's his last name? Okay. Is he on the panel?
I don't know.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I don't know too much about Tom, so I guess I'll find out.
Hi, Chris.
Chris.
Larry, nice to meet you.
Nice
Yeah.
to meet you.
So, while that you were talking about this, one thing in particular just interested me, like, which is, and I don't hear a whole lot talk about it. Right? So it's like just recovering the whole civil discourse. You know, just really trying to figure out a way to avoid just this inane sense of, like you're talking about, where it's like,
That video?
it's almost like, you know, demoralizing. Can we even begin to, like, creatively, civilly, you know what I mean, rather than all this. Just, that's the part that's disheartening. That's so discouraging, you know, because you think, does anybody care about it?
Well, you almost think that they do this on purpose because as far as they're concerned, it feels like they're
I know.
serving the few and the powerful, it's their benefit to,
Michael.
you know,
It's effective.
Look at the old
Just because after a while, I heard something years ago. It was an interview with, I think it was Rachel Maddow was interviewing John Stewart, and he talked about it was probably the best treatment of this thing. He says, listen, the way that the dialogue goes now is, he says, somewhere with the advent of 24-hour news, all the producers and networks, you know, figured out that the only way to capture and maintain, you know, that people's attention was to take every major news story and dumb it down to a binary. like a rugby, like when you look at something, you have a half a second to figure out which team, you know, are you red or blue? Like, is that my team or, you know, where's my, and then, okay, I know where I'm at. And that's it. It's, and that kind of binary, red, blue, black, you know, all of them, as you just run down the line. What is it? B is straight, and it's only binary. So you only get to choose between, oh, that's right, I'm on this side, over against the guys with white hats, the guys with black hats. And when I talk to people, that's what they find out. It's like enemy center, over and against. Not constructive, not, you know what I mean, not a dialogue of I thoughts like you can deal with it. I stand where I stand, over and against those idiots. It's like, that's the enemy part.
All the time. Their agenda, which tends to be one agenda.
Well, I don't think
the media is owned by.
Sure.
But I'm like, why are you so worried?
Yes.
You get there. I'm still going over that.
I agree. That's why I was listening.
Which is, it's better, you know, when it comes to arguing.
I agree.
Just create this whole mindset.
Yes.
It's gonna take it all down. There is no solution to terrorism.
Let's kind of address some of these issues, guys. I'm leaving. I got nothing.
I so agree with that. How do you?
The problem is, so I was kind of like, all right. I'm good with that. Yeah.
No,
I just
agree
have
with
family
them.
friends that did controversy. I stood there, corporate sponsors. And we're taught to think that this is not when actually this is rocket science. This is not, you know, this is not some like mystery. How do we create a democracy?
Even though
Right.
some of them are, some of them drive every other day.
People who
Can't even
come
drive
up
it.
and work their way up the political system now
That's how many people
are like
there.
the sick of the
Really
sick, you
nothing.
know? It's like we have a political class, which is, you know, they're psychopathic.
Yeah.
Look at it. Many of them, especially the Republicans, they're just registered lunatics. Totally, nothing against, you know, mental illness. But this is not who should be running our country. And, you know, or who should be role models. You know, we know that when Donald Trump talks that people get beat up, and people get murdered. And murders in South Carolina, where, you know, they so-called abandoned line. You know, that young man who was deluded about Confederate, you know, sort of white supremacy. That talk is very dangerous. It's very dangerous, and to be elevated that to the level of political discourse is absolutely dangerous. And you know, I think this is a challenge right now. It's for normal people to somehow steal their narrative and not be intimidated by the fact and to reclaim our cause. Don't
But among people are friends, right? So they're already majority, like Democrat, Republican. So even starting that conversation, you're starting, you know what
I mean, there are, you know, the numbers actually hold that majority is not
We're saying.
A lot of people are really pissed off.
Okay, well, that's hopeful.
Yeah, oh, it is. It's so much more open than you would think. In fact, majorities now disapprove of Democrats and Republicans. 55% of Americans disapprove of Republicans.
Oh, you see, that, when you said that earlier, I was, those statistics, and then if he only has a third of that 21%, that's what.
That's what, that's the
We gotta get that information out, because otherwise it just feels like this huge, overwhelming.
That's why, I don't know if you were here when I was talking about how we need to be political verified. This is all about political therapy. It's about getting back in touch, and it's about breaking up with your abusive political relationships with the Democratic Party. And stop making excuses for a power. Stop making excuses for a political party that is destroying you.
So
Because that's what it is.
You're right, I wish I had heard that.
So look, I
the
got
organizers,
Yeah, thank you.
will there be organizers who campaign that help like do rallies?
Yes.
I would love to see I would love to participate in a rally.
Yes, so you will be hearing more
Dude.
about.
We should rally downtown.
Yeah.
I do have some chance.
I got to recall.
Before you arrived, one of co-worker of mine in the vineyard demanded in writing whether Jill Stein was in favor of the abolition of Israel on account of it being a Zionist state and therefore not a state that was involved in representing its citizens equally. And I answered, for the record, in writing, that not only I, but I think most Green Party members agreed that Israel cannot be abolished. It's not a way to go about foreign policy. Pick and choose states that you're going to abolish. And then we're going to have to stand instead, rather, for the rights of Palestinians, the human rights of Palestinians, like the rights of everybody. And that since Israel is a political ally in the United States, we use our leverage to assert those rights.
I would frame it slightly differently. You know, I would say that our foreign policy needs to be very clear and consistent with international law and human rights. And currently, the state of Israel is in flagrant violation. So it's not our job to define nation states. I think it's not our job to tell Israel and Palestine how to work it out, but it is our job to stop funding human rights abuse and criminal war crimes, which is what we are funding. So, you know, where does Netanyahu get his money? From Sheldon Adelson. You know, the U.S. is empowering this apartheid war state in Israel. It wouldn't exist if we weren't making it possible. So let's stop making it possible. Let's stop making it inevitable by ceasing to fund. You know, Nazi Germany would not have existed were it not for the Koch brothers and American corporate money that basically enabled Hitler to establish a Nazi state. So, you know, there are things that we can do here. You know, America has been kind of on the wrong side of many conflicts and has created conflicts that we then get embroiled in. And, you know, I've made incredible sacrifices with them. And these wars, so-called wars on terror, are extremely wrong-headed. We created the Mujahideen, remember? We armed them and financed them as part of an effort to stop the Soviet Union. So we created this little monster, which then we have empowered the Saudis to spread all over the world. And this is now coming back to bite us in a big way. So we need a weapons embargo to the Middle East for starters, and maybe everywhere. We need to stop arming all sides and inflaming this conflict. And we need to stop the funding of these, you know, terrorist sources. We need to stop being an occupying force that's driving terrorism in the first place. But then we can cool the flames now. You know, how do we fight ISIS? We don't fight ISIS by dropping more bombs. We're just going to create another ISIS. What we have to do is a weapons embargo and to stop the finances, particularly the Saudis.
So you said this is a mixture
The
of.
question is Jill Stein sound on Israel? I heard you just say you will stop arming Israel with American weapons.
And not just Israel.
You also mentioned not providing Israel, but it is Israel that I'm telling you. I'm getting shots across the bow.
I get asked all the time, you know, are you for a one-state or a two-state solution?
I don't think it's in that terms. Yeah. That's a jargon. Are we in the nuclear triad? And I understood, I read one well-known blogger tell us that since Trump couldn't answer a question about the nuclear triad, he was completely unrealistic as a president. What ridiculousness what Trump said in his answer was, when you're dealing with nuclear weapons, you have to be careful. And get out of your control, and you're using for war. Because they're just
well, actually, we need to undo nuclear weapons.
I agree with that. But
there's
the issue is that if we start talking jargon words, single state, double state, it's really not getting to the real issue. How much, at what point does the United States state of Israel stop?
Yes.
We're not going to go there.
Oh, exactly.
And my answer is now the United States, as you said, is not in the business of deciding what states exist and what states don't exist. The United States is not in the business of bankrolling paintballing, imperialist wars. And we ought to stop doing it ourselves and stop enabling
Right.
it.
That's right. You know, there's a longer discussion, a deeper one, about can you have democracies that are also, theocracies? You know, can you have religious governments and still be democratic? And, I'm dubious that that's possible. Personally, I don't have faith in the religious states. I think they're a very dangerous thing when religion and state structures get together. But I don't feel like that's my job. Put it this way, there are grassroots groups on the ground, human rights groups, who are Israeli and Palestinian, who are working it out great. They are working it out. And my feeling is that we need to lift up these grassroots human rights groups and let them build community and build trust. And that's how we work our way forward to solving this conflict. It's not by the U.S. coming in and saying, well, we're going to draw these boundaries like we want them. No, this is for the people of the region to work out in a way that puts human rights and international law first.
It comes back somewhat to the Spanish Civil War. Is it right that the Spanish, French, and the English Parliament did not allow any weapons to go into state during the Spanish Civil War? The only countries that did, of course, allow weapons to go in were Nazi Germany and fascist Italy. And then the fascists won the Civil War. The other hand is, look what happened when you brought the Russians in. The Russians were interested in the Russian Parliament, and more or less. It didn't matter to them who won or lost in Spain. They wanted to be in control of the anti-fascist movement. And so they butchered left and right among the leadership of the anti-fascist movement. They weren't sufficiently scholars.
Well, this is why we need a worldwide embargo on all weapons and stop the war profiteering industry. Yes, all right, great.
Ready for picture of her?
Are you videoing all this on purpose or?
Yeah.
2, and 3. You know what? Let's do it this side because the lights are
Okay.
There we go. 1, 2.
I'm not going to abandon
There
you.
you go.
All right, so much. Thank you. Yeah, thanks for coming.
Hey, what are you doing for me too? I don't have a camera. What are you doing for me? Put on Facebook? I never get my picture.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. All right. Oh,
Thank you.
It's about 6:10, transit time's 15 minutes.
Okay, all right. So we should probably,
So, 35-minute buffer.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Onward.
What's your number? What's your phone number or your email address?
Are you on Facebook?
Turn on.
It's Bonnie Green. I don't know.
Any outstanding
Did you go to
donations
PCC?
or
Oh, you look really
I went to
familiar.
Linfield,
Oh, okay.
McMinnville.
Well, I think I see you around some events or something. So anyway, it's Bonnie.
This is the same here.
Oh, okay.
Hey, how are you? Good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing
Great.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah.
Right. You can be my friend if you want to.
All right, so what we have here,
Okay, I'll tell you.
pay for you and get $25, so.
You want to take a picture together?
Okay,
Like my
oh,
GPS. Someone that lives in-
oh, okay, that's cool. I was thinking in terms of cash.
Or you can do.
Well, I had no idea. I don't know how, all I know is whatever counts. Yes, it all counts towards your
Yes.
actual month thing. Okay. All right.
$250.
Okay, well, let me get the, there's kind of a flare.
Oh, thank you. Where else?
Okay,
Yeah,
now
right there, right there, yeah. Yeah, that's right.
NBC.
Got it.
This is not my mailing address. It's just-
Yes, it's
Okay, I'll tell you the phone. Okay.
All my life. Yeah. Are you going to the other thing?
Yeah. I have to deliver the package.
Might stop over there.
Now, where we had a,
Where is it?
Please have it. What's on 18th Street? 7. I'll get these addresses.
Union Station in Portland, directions.
No, I really will. You share with me, but I'd love to hear more about that concept. Because that's kind of really my real house.
So, yes, it
Yeah.
is.
Yes, sure,
Okay.
sure.
Yeah, that'll work fine.
So I have a section. Thank you. There you go. You got dollars. And now you are $25 this year, only matching fund, I guess, or whatever it is. You already qualified.
Well, we're matching funds, what happens is this is double.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So
you're, guys are.
So I will be
Events would be.
that second interview.
It's a climate forum. People who went to Paris will be talking together about stuff related to climate.
So,
And so it's not
and
specifically
this is
Green
down
Party,
here.
Green Party per
It's
se.
actually a 350 number.
So
What's 350 PDX? What's 350 number?
Oh, okay, I'm not sure
I
what
need
that
to
is.
take
but that's-
Jill from this
It's a climate
event
action.
to Corvallis.
Not part of it.
dumb me up with the train
This is
station.
Jill attended.
Or you were picked her up. Because you're gonna pick her up at 30, right?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so I could be there.
Just,
Cool, you have a little conference going on there.
Hello, world.
Oh, my goodness.
Hello,
I want you
Sab.
to see me, that's why I'm behind the camera.
Oops, sorry.
Photographers never let me in front of the camera.
Just people. Hello.
Not without you, you're the one.
We've got our own.
Like 'em out.
We've got our own
Oh, look at you got spotlight on you. Broski.
I had a Zodiac party.
And the food again.
Fine fare,
Okay,
Fine
so
fare.
fine fare, fine fellow.
If you don't have time, I can.
I didn't get to say goodbye. Did you leave?
No.
Oh, good.
Well, where is this in relation?
That's what this is.
Well, downtown is pretty.
All right. So that was it. This will be recorded and posted, or just recorded on YouTube and left there. Thank you so much for joining.
Agenda for the next several days here.
Bye. Go Jill Stein. Oh, one thing before we leave. Some notes. Vote green for 2016. Empower people to find their political
Oh,
power.
okay, all right. I get it.
Reject
So after
lesser
tomorrow, you
evil
are done show
and
for-
stand up for the greater good. That's where your vote counts.
Are you needing video?
And finally,
tomorrow or not?
Politics of courage
Are you perfectly consistent?
instead of voting for your fears, because voting your fears actually creates those. Some
I don't know, I
nice little
just- I didn't know
takeaways from
what
today.
you wanted to- what
You want to record?
Spread the word. If you can, go to jillstein.com. I'm sorry, jill2016.com and place your donation today. Let's turn the White House into a greenhouse. Cheers.
The building.